Everyone knows that getting rid of the deficit will require some tough decisions, and that includes cutting back on billions of dollars in programs that a lot of people care about. But what should be easy is getting rid of the pointless waste and stupid spending that doesn't benefit anybody. Waste we should be getting rid of even if we didn't have a deficit. Sure, some of these cuts aren't that big, but no amount of waste is acceptable. Not when it's your money. Not at a time when so many Americans are already cutting back. Just as families are living within their means, government should too. Did you know the federal government pays for a website devoted to a folk music ensemble made up of forest rangers? They're called the Fiddlin' Foresters. I'll put their music on my iPod, but I'm not paying for their website. And there are hundreds of similar sites that we should consolidate or just get rid of. By the way, you're not only paying for websites no one needs, you're paying for thousands of buildings all across the country no one uses. For the last decade, the government's owned a massive and completely empty warehouse in the middle of Brooklyn, for example. Now, the government hadn't been able to sell this building and others like it because of red tape and Washington politics that held things up for years. But we're finally cutting through all that and plan to get rid of these buildings in the months ahead. We need to step up our game. We need to go after every dime. We need to make government work for you. That's why, starting today, I've asked the Vice President to lead a renewed effort to hunt down misspent tax dollars in every agency and department of this government. We're calling it the Campaign to Cut Waste, and I know Joe's the right man to lead it, because nobody messes with Joe.
There's a new standard by which the government is going to function from this point on. The American people are entitled to transparency. Look, a lot of this depends on new, sophisticated methods, but it also, we know, depends on relentless focus on making this a priority. Focus that can't be delegated. We're holding ourselves accountable, and we're deeply committed and focused on making government function better. We're not just eliminating fraud and waste. We hope to be instilling an entire new culture that not only our administration, but every succeeding administration will in fact pursue.
Do you think that's as funny as I do? Because I think that's really funny. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. Good morning, Allison. I watched that video and I couldn't help but play it. Because you know what actually ended up happening? I think you do. Is that, yes, maybe Obama did start out and he wanted to cut government waste and government crazy spending. And he's doing exactly what Trump is doing right now. Of course, nobody wants to go back and talk about that. But what happened? He put Joe Biden in charge, didn't he? Well, what do you think happened then? I am sure that Joe Biden probably started out thinking, okay, let's look into this situation. And then he realized, gee, that's a pretty easy way to steal money now, isn't it? That you can go in and create an NGO in your mom's name, your sister's name, your kid's name, your dog's name, and then divert federal money into that NGO. And guess what? It's the perfect crime now, isn't it? And I certainly don't see anybody hauled off to jail right now for doing it. Allison, I just got choked on my coffee laughing. I know. That's not a good one. Daddy, the wolf was put in charge of the hen house. Isn't that the truth? And that's probably how all of this started. Now, it probably started long before that, but there's no doubt in my mind that they saw exactly how you can steal money. And then guess what? They all did it, didn't they? They all took part in it. You know, we're going to talk about it a little bit, but excuse me. I'll probably be coughing a lot today. But we know what happened, and that was that now we have two auto pens, right? Two people with auto pens signing Joe Biden's signature. No surprise there, no surprise there. So I hated missing yesterday. I was up, I had the show together, I was all ready to go. And then two things. One is I was beyond tired. And I thought there is no way I'm going to make it through a show. I'm so tired I can't even think straight. And then secondly, my son really needed my help to do something. And so I thought, well, I don't really feel that great. I'm just going to take some time away because I've been working. I don't even remember the last day I had off work, quite honestly. So far back that I don't even remember. And so I thought, well, I'm going to help him. So I decided not to do the show. I didn't go back to sleep. I thought, well, I'm not sleepy. I'm just exhausted. And then I went he's on the other side, way down on the other side of the house. And I went down there and sure enough, he's asleep. I woke him up. I'm like, what is going on? You wanted to go and get all this done today and you need my help. Oh, I'm so tired. I'm not going to do it. Then he ended up oversleeping and going to work late. So that was my morning yesterday. So I hated to miss the show. And Ruth, such a great point, Ruth. Was that the real Biden? Was that the real Biden? Yes, I think it was the real Biden. Now, who was the guy we saw later? I don't know. Did you guys see that video of Alina Habba in the fake White House? I've got a little clip of that here. It is pretty darn funny. She's like, look what I found. I found the fake White House. I'm going to play that really quickly here.
I just finished a show. Look at the room that they put me in. We're in Biden's fake Oval Office, everybody. And I've actually figured this out. I now know why. I now get it. Turn the camera around. There is a screen, teleprompter to the face. All I can say is the last administration was a disgrace.
Oh, yes. Yes, it was a disgrace now, wasn't it? Remember when we all talked about the fake, soundstage that Biden gave all of his conferences from? Now, I love that Alina Baba is over there. I think that's her name. Is it Belina? No. Alina Habba. I will eventually get it right. But, I want to see Elon Musk over there. I want to see Donald Trump sitting over there. I want to see those two sitting in the fake White House saying, oh, this is where it all went down, where the American people was played. This is where it all happened. Theater is what it all was, just theater. Was Biden ever really in the White House? I used to say that you couldn't convince me that he was ever in the White House. You still can't convince me that man was ever in the real Oval Office or in the real White House. He spent over half of each year of his presidency at his home in Delaware. And then he goes to Washington, D.C., and he's in this fake White House soundstage. I mean, come on, it's crazy. Good morning, Karen. And Allison, some of those Autopens were done when Biden was in the Caribbean. Yeah, 2 Autopens that have now been realized that were made. Good morning, Dina. Bad theater at that. You better believe it was bad theater. We all knew, didn't we? I want to see, and I'm not downing Trump. I know I'm going to talk about some things today where people might think I'm turning on Trump. That is never going to be the case. It's never going to be the case. I know things take time and we have to give it time. We have to hang in there. We have to trust the process. Now, we may not like everything that's going on because trust me, I don't. I definitely don't. However, we just have to trust the process. We're only a few days in. What is today? March? Is today the 15th, I think? So we're just heading into the future. There's a lot going on. We've made leaps and bounds in this short amount of time. Gas prices, a 4-year low, believe it or not. 3rd consecutive week, gas prices have gone down. So things are happening. Things are happening. We're going to talk about the peace deal that Donald Trump is making with Putin and eventually with Zelensky. And this one seems like it may actually come to fruition. So we're going to get into that. Oh, March. What did I say? A different month, Jay? March. Oh, today's March 14th. Isn't that terrible? I don't even have. Oh, yeah, it's right there on my calendar. I am so mixed up these days. I don't know what day it is. I really have no idea what day it is. I know it's Friday, but when it was Wednesday, I thought it was Thursday. And that's kind of mixed my entire week up. And of course, I work all weekend. Now, tomorrow, I'm only going to work half a day. I'm like, I need a little bit of a break. I need to see some sunshine. I haven't seen the light of day, and I don't even remember when. And so I am looking forward to a little bit of a half day, maybe get myself back in order. Jay says, and yet my gas prices haven't moved in a month. Give it some time, Jay. Give it some time. It's coming. Starting on the coast and working its way down into, these the Midwest. Speaking of the Midwest, I guess you guys heard we're in for some crazy storms. Now, Jay, I know you're going to say the same thing I'm thinking, and that is that the weather models are usually wrong. They always tell us, oh, it's going to be so crazy. I remember, what was it, last week or the week before? They were talking about, oh, it's going to be so crazy. And I'm like, oh, everybody in my family, make sure you charge your phones and have everything in order in case something happens. And then nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. And now we're being told that we're going to have, some potentially what, 75 to 90 mile per hour winds. It's a very quick moving storm that's going to go right through the Midwest, with St. Louis and the Metro East being the very center point, which is pretty crazy. St. Louis City, St. Louis counties, Metro East Illinois. And it is making world news, which is really strange to me that it's making world news. I saw articles in the UK and Ireland and a couple other places talking about this big storm system that's coming through. We have all of the weather folks in town, keeping an eye on things. Sherry says gas was $2.29 in Austin. Man, that's a pretty good price. Let's see. Dina says if he pulls it off, he will deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. Not that he will get it. You got that right. He definitely does deserve it. He deserves it for that and several other things. Sherry, tomorrow will be we dodged a bullet. Probably so, Sherry. And I really hope that's the case. Jay says that's what I was going to say. Be prepared, but don't panic. It hasn't even happened yet. Yeah, I'm not panicking by any means, but I am trying to think ahead. I just bought some new fruit trees, as some of you know, and of course they're not planted yet. They're out in the back patio. So I'm like, man, I better bring those in because I don't want them to get blown over or, damaged. I'm worried about my chickens. I don't want sometimes when the wind gets really right now I have tarps over the coop because in plastic around it because of winter, kind of winterizing it, but that also makes the wind pick it up, and there's been times where it's gotten really windy and it'll move like an entire foot. So my brother's going to help me round up the chickens later. We're going to put them in the coop, nice and secure. The coop itself is secure, so if things get too crazy and the run moves, the chickens will be fine inside the coop. So those are the things I'm thinking ahead about. Other than that, I'm not overly worried. I was reading today that is it Reed Timmer, who's a storm chaser. I was reading his post and he was talking about how it's the bear claw. If you go and look at any of his posts, he called it the bear claw. And there's these streaks of storms that are coming up kind of from they're coming up from the southwest and heading up towards the northeast. And I'm like, man, one of those bear paw streaks goes right over my house. But they said that at the worst, we might see F1 or F2 tornadoes. So it's not a situation where they're predicting F4, F5 tornadoes. And that makes me feel a lot better about this situation. Dottie, is FEMA on standby? Nope. FEMA's all FEMA money went to ActBlue. Forget about FEMA. They're not going to help us. Come on now. I know you know better. But that is pretty funny. Good morning, Karen. Sherry, I love a good thunderstorm. Last year to this date, we had hail. I did not know that. And with this storm that's coming through, I've heard different reports. One report I read said that it would be completely dry, that there is no rain attached to the storm. So how do you have a storm without rain? They said that the dryness is actually potentially going to cause fires because I said it's so dry. And this is not going to be some drenching storm that comes through. It's going to move through, they said, extremely quickly, and that it's going to produce a lot of lightning. And they're very worried in these dry conditions that lightning, could strike and cause some fires, which means, of course, that they've, got weather modification employed and they're expecting to burn half the states down so they can go after our rare earth minerals. Um, we know how that works, don't we? Alan says, as part of the Washington Guard, I have learned to prepare for anything. Yes, that is one thing the Washington Guard is great for. If, safety in numbers, of course, and if there's a storm that happens and people in need, man, the Washington Guard is going to come to your rescue. Hopefully they don't have to come and rescue me. I'm worried. I have all these really big old trees. I have some really old, big pecan trees and different types of hickory nut trees, black walnuts, and I would be absolutely devastated if my best pecan tree fell down. It wouldn't probably fall on anything, but it would just be devastating for that to happen. So I'm praying also for my trees. Sherry says, St. Louis is a smart city. I'm not even going to go there, Sherry. There is something that I could say about St. Louis getting hit by a storm and becoming a smart city, but I'm just going to leave it alone. I don't want to get myself in trouble and have protesters outside of my house. Dottie, cue up the sudden explosive fires. That's exactly right. What were there in South Carolina? 175 fires, recently, and be careful too when it's warm out and like this, and we're having these really dry conditions. I don't know if you guys saw, there was a woman in South Carolina burning debris in her backyard, not intending to start a fire by any means, a wildfire. She's just burning trash and junk. And then, yes, it happened. A fire began, and she's sitting in prison right now. And this was just one of these recent South Carolina fires. So do not be playing around burning stuff when it's windy and when the conditions are so dry. Always look first to see if the conditions are too dry to be burning some fires, because it is not worth it. Good morning, Linda. Linda, I was looking for you this morning because Linda lives in the Metro East, and the area that she lives in, I saw, is going to be at the center of what they expect to be the highest in you live in Madison County, Illinois, and you've told people that, so I'm not telling anything that you haven't told yourself. But they say that Madison County is going to be like the center of one of these big claw, like they called it the bear claw storm. One of these big marks goes right through. So Linda, stay safe. Stay safe. Jay says, not enough common sense. There never is. And Jay says, old big trees have gone through these things and are still standing. They have. They have. And I try to tell myself, hopefully my trees aren't going anywhere. Lots going on today to talk about. I keep hearing flash floods with these storms. I don't know. Some say no rain, some say flash floods. All we'll have to do is wait and see. That's all we can do. Be prepared, make sure your phones are charged, and wait and see. Even though it's crazy wind, again, EF1, EF2 tornadoes, I'm not scared of that. I'm scared of an F4 and F5 for tornado, that's for sure. Paul says, you have absolutely no control over a fire by yourself when it's windy. I agree. That's why you've got to just not start one. Just don't start one. Do not start one. Did you guys hear Zuckerberg, old Zuck? $60 billion he's going to invest in the United States, thousands of jobs. He's pulling some of his, resources away from other countries. Why? Because he doesn't want to face these tariffs. Tariffs work. Tariffs work. We have Ireland, what they want to hit us with 125% tariff on imported goods. You know what? Let them. How about we, instead of us all complaining, not that you guys are complaining, but instead about people complaining, how about we go out and try our hardest to find American-made products? I know there aren't many of them around, which is highly unfortunate. Russia, we'll talk more about Russia later, but Russia, as we know, has been sanctioned to the hilt by every single country. And what happened when they became sanctioned? They became stronger. Their poverty level is at an all-time historic low, 7.2%. Why? Because they have become self-sufficient, which is exactly what we need to do. And people say, oh, somebody was just telling me, oh, Trump is doing such a bad job. The stock market has just completely crashed. He's doing that on purpose. He's doing that on purpose. He wants the stock market to crash because that's how you reset inflation. That's how you reset interest rates. So he wants the stock market to crash. That's not unusual. And we'll just, it's somebody told me the other day when I was complaining about something Trump was doing, when I was upset over him kind of sidelining Elon Musk a little bit with Doge. They're like, you know what? You just have to trust the process. And Trump is playing chess and not checkers. And I keep replaying that to myself in my head, that these are all things that are happening for a reason. It's all strategic. It's strategic. And Allison, tariffs are a great bargaining tool. They are a great bargaining tool. And again, let people tariff us, because we will become a stronger country for it. It'll take time. It won't be easy. It'll be patchy, but we will be better for it. Jay says, we have enough American-made stuff to survive. Besides, most of these reciprocal tariffs go away. They do. And yes, we're perfectly fine. We will survive. Which, speaking of, I thought this was kind of funny. I saw this article the other day. It was called Recession Brown. They said that's the women's 2025 hair color of the year is called Recession Brown. Now, I'm pretty sure it was a joke. But what they meant is that, of course, the price of salons has gone up so high that women can't afford to keep their brown hair blonde. So they're letting it grow out. And they have, now this is my natural hair, so you're not going to see my roots grow out, 100% mine. But they were talking about how recession brown, where you see women with their dark roots growing out because they can't afford to go to the salon. I do my own hair. I don't color it or anything, but about, I don't know, 4 or 5 6 years ago, I did go to a salon and had my hair done, and the girl did a fantastic job, by the way. But it was $350 plus tip. And I'm like, that's insane. I get it. It's hard work. It really is, especially if you have to foil hair like mine, where I have a bazillion small, fine hairs to foil. But my gosh, it's expensive. And Mandy says, he is the master of art of the deal. He sure is. Good morning, Kim. He absolutely is. And that's what we got to remember. And we have to remind ourselves he's playing chess, not checkers. There is a plan. It's not easy for us, but there is a plan. And when I saw yesterday that Trump has decided to, oh, this is so upsetting to me. He has decided to continue aid to Ukraine. I seriously about lost my mind. Not only aid, but weapons. We're sending more medium range missiles into Ukraine. Now, why are we doing that? Why? Yes, okay, so their missile supply is low. Is it our job to keep restocking them? When you cast that vote for Donald Trump, didn't you expect the funding of Ukraine to end? And that didn't happen. And the only thing I can think of is that, on his defense, maybe he's doing this strategically. Maybe he wants that, maybe that's his bargaining chip to Putin to say, hey, we need to reach this ceasefire deal, which they have. I didn't expect this to happen. I really didn't expect it to happen. And it hasn't fully happened yet. It hasn't fully happened yet, but it is happening to some degree. Putin said that he will not agree to a temporary ceasefire. That's how he went into the meeting yesterday with the attitude. He said he's not going to agree to a temporary ceasefire because he wants a permanent ceasefire, a long-standing ceasefire, not something temporary. So Donald Trump sent Marco Rubio and was it Tim Wetkoff? I can't remember that guy's name. Over to Moscow to meet with Putin, and they did come up with a deal. Now there's a lot of strategizing that goes into this deal. Donald Trump is trying to work out a plan, and there's a lot of transactions taking place. So Russia wants to keep a certain amount of land. Zelensky says no, they can't keep any land. So they're trying to bargain. He's working as a mediator, going back and forth. He's going to be meeting with Zelensky again, or his team is, probably not he himself. And they're going to meet with Zelensky and they're going to say, okay, how much are you willing to give? Then they got to go back and mediate with Russia and say, okay, how much are you willing to give back that you've already taken? And they're fighting over a power plant. Who gets control of this power plant? They're fighting over the minerals. Russia's taken over 70% of the area that contains Ukraine's rare earth minerals. So, of course, they're going back and forth over that. And there's a lot that still needs to be worked out. Now, what I worry about in this situation is that Ukraine may agree to a ceasefire. I don't think they will ever hold their end of the deal. Zelensky still wants NATO. He still has the country under martial law. He still will not allow an election to take place. And Donald Trump says the only way that this is going to work, the only way we're going to agree to mediate is if you allow a free, fair election. So there's still a lot that needs to be done, a lot that needs to be worked out before we have any answers in this situation. But things are changing and changing quickly. And Mary, only way to shut Zelensky up. Well, I think we know the only way to do that is. And it's kind of funny that you say that, because have you noticed that Ukraine has kind of taken the place of the Clintons? Remember back in the day, we had this long list of names that were people who were associated with the Clintons who expired in one way or the other, were unalived one way or the other. Well, now it's Ukraine. Elon Musk says that Ukraine was behind the hacking of X, his platform. We have, oh gosh, what is that guy's name? I can't even remember now. Alex, what is that? What is the media guy? Alex, how do I not know his name right now? Anyway, he's claiming that he found out that Ukraine is trying to assassinate him. And everyone's blaming Ukraine for attempting to assassinate Donald Trump, of course. So there's a lot going on with Ukraine. It kind of makes me think that the Clintons were getting too much heat for everything they were doing. And now all of a sudden it's Ukraine. Well, anything bad that happens, let's just blame it on Ukraine, because they're a puppet. Their government's not real. So it doesn't hurt to blame something on people who, and things that aren't real, right? Alex Jones. Oh my God. Thank you, Mandy. I don't know how I could, and Dottie and Allison and Sherry. Everybody knew Alex Jones but me. I've actually never watched Alex Jones' show, believe it or not. I've seen him. I know who he is, but I've never watched his show before. And I don't watch media. As you guys probably know, I read the news. I don't watch TV or watch any podcasts or shows. Paul says if they don't uphold the ceasefire, then we walk away. But will we walk away? What exactly are we doing? That's what I want to know. What exactly are we doing? I know that Trump, he's like the mad negotiator in a good way, going back and forth, trying to get the best deal. And that's his job. That's his perfection that he's done in his lifetime. He's been highly successful through his negotiating deals. I just can't. I might as well. I'm glad it's Friday because I cannot talk today. But, as we know, and I've talked in this show so much about the growing divide between the United States and Europe. And you know what? I kind of thought I was on this island alone where I am the only person who thinks that down the line, we are no longer going to be allowed. Gosh, I really can't talk. We are no longer going to be aligned with Europe, but instead we're going to form this alliance with Russia and eventually China. I know that China is going to be a tough one. You guys hear me talk about this pretty much every show, but it's happening. It is happening. You can see it happening. You can see it play out before your eyes. We are going to withdraw from NATO. And what is that going to look like? Right now, under NATO, we have a deal. When you join NATO, when one of your allies is in trouble, you support that ally like a team. You're a team. And when one person's in trouble, everybody else throws in and they all help out. Well, that's not happening anymore. And we're going to talk about that. I'm going to show you this little video clip, and there are 2 video clips, actually. I'm just going to play them together, and then you'll see exactly what I'm saying. People are waking up, and they're starting to see the writing on the wall, just like I have, and it is coming. So whether you like it or not, I like it. You might not. It's time to prepare yourself for it.
Exclusive NBC News reporting. President Trump is now considering making a major change to the United States' participation in the NATO alliance. The administration is discussing a potential new policy in which the U.S. might not come to the defense of a NATO ally if it were attacked, if that country doesn't meet the defense spending threshold. That's according to 3 current and former senior U.S. officials and 1 congressional official. Now, if that happens, it would mean the U.S. would be going against the core tenet of the alliance, including Article 5, where an attack on one member is an attack.
From within, you would do everything Donald Trump's done in his first 50 days. You would wreck the economy, you would suspend the services from the federal government, and you would demolish our security alliances with the West. I found what happened in the White House last week maybe the most unsettling thing of all the years of Trump's presidency. Greater than Helsinki, maybe greater than January 6th for this reason. If you play out the sequence of this on a chessboard, what Donald Trump may knowingly have done, which is exactly what Putin would have wanted, is when you abandon Ukraine, Europe now has to rush to Ukraine. Europe doesn't have a choice, and they have to strengthen their bond with Ukraine. And if Donald Trump decides out of his own vanities, wait a minute, Europe, you're not following my direction, you could fast forward a couple years. The United States is in a power axis, an alliance with Russia and China against the interest of Europe. And Europe sees the U.S., Russia, and China as an adversarial alliance against their interests. It is the complete undoing of NATO, but it is a repositioning of the U.S. position in the world. That is realistic. This is more than just the United States and Donald Trump abandoning the defense of Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression. This is pushing Europe into a stronger role that Donald Trump has told them he doesn't want them to be in. He doesn't want a stronger NATO. And now Europe's going to say, we are going to strengthen NATO. Macron actually addressed the French people just in the last 24 hours, essentially alluding to this. If Donald Trump says, screw you, Europe, I'm getting greater reception and sympathies from Russia and Putin, we could end this Trump administration with a new axis, a new alliance.
And this guy's 100% right, except for that he's just looking at it the wrong way is the problem. Oh, now my buttons are going to act up. He's just looking at it the wrong way. He's a Democrat. He's a liberal. He's not looking at it the right way. Yes, that's exactly what's happening. It's exactly what is going to happen. I've been talking about it for weeks now. It is absolutely what's going to happen. And the reason why is because Europe, Western Europe, they don't like us. They're liberal, they're woke, they have the woke mind virus, and there's nothing we can do to save them. And so, therefore, yes, we will absolutely withdraw from NATO. And when we withdraw from NATO, where this guy is wrong is that he says, well, NATO will grow stronger. But that's not the case. NATO will diminish and they will fall apart and there will be no more NATO because Europe, they cannot stand on their own without the United States. They just can't. NATO cannot stand on its own without the United States. And I think that we have to have this power shift. We have to, for our own sake, for the sake of our children and our grandchildren, we have to form this new alliance. Now, you might say, well, I don't like Russia and I don't like China and I don't want to be aligned with them. And I'm going to say, well, why? Because we, the United States, we're still our own sovereign country. You know, if we form an alliance with China and with Russia, we are going to be unformidable. I mean, we will be the most powerful entity in the entire world. And there's not a lot that's going to be able to change that. And it's certainly not going to be Europe or NATO. That's for sure. They've spent over 50% of their military budget on Ukraine. You know, they are weak. Yes, they're trying to rearm. That'll take decades to do. They are nowhere near trying to, getting able to rearm. Good morning, Robert and Paul. Europe would cut our throats in 2 seconds. They have no allegiance to the country that bailed out on them out of 2 wars. Yeah, Western Europe has no allegiance to us at all. Mr. Colonel Joe Adams, part of the negotiations are removing the codes for the long-range missiles so Ukraine cannot fire them into Russia. Trump has already done it. Start of the deal. I did not know that, Colonel Adams, and thank you for filling us in on that. Because when I heard that Donald Trump was again establishing aid and weapons and missiles to Ukraine, I'm like, why are we doing this? I don't mind helping the people, but I'm not going to play this video for you today. But think about this. What you see on the news, that's not real. Just like what happened in Syria many years ago, when you had CNN sitting in the middle of East Aleppo, with these buildings torn down around them, white hats running around saving people from the rubble. Well, what they didn't show you is that you could literally walk 1 to 2 blocks over to a Syrian government controlled neighborhood where you had people running around smoking cigars and playing music and women wearing their hair long, wearing jeans, and people just living their lives 2 blocks over. But CNN didn't want to show you that. And it's the same situation with Ukraine. The fighting is in that eastern region along the border. When you go into some of these cities in Ukraine, these people are living their lives. I've watched countless videos of people. They're out, they're going to bars, they're going to restaurants, they're out shopping, they're out, living their lives. And the media just wants to scam you. That's all it is. It's all a bunch of propaganda. That's why I don't watch it. I do not even turn my TV on. I don't watch it. I see videos that people play on these different channels that I follow, not television channels, but things that I read. And it's all just fake. Robert says the fake video of Assad gassing kids. Exactly, Robert. That's a perfect example of that. Assad never gassed children or his own people. It was all fake. It was all theater. It was all propaganda that we, the United States, paid for. We paid for it. And we know that. I just watched, you guys, some of you guys may have seen it too. I just watched this congressional hearing where they were talking about, it's not new, but they were talking about us funding the Taliban. We were giving $40 million a week to the Taliban. After everything the Taliban has done, we, the United States, have always funded terrorism and Sunni terrorism at that. We don't fund the Shiites. We don't fund the Alawites or any of these other groups. We fund the dangerous people. And that's exactly what we were doing in Afghanistan, funding the Taliban with $40 million a week. And then the oversight committee goes on and they say, oh, well, that's not just the Taliban we fund. We also fund al-Shabaab and, all of these Salafis, all these other people who are very dangerous, people who are responsible for terror acts and bombings and all, some very horrific things. But yet we, the United States, continue to fund these programs. And that's one thing I can say that I think Donald Trump is going in the right direction with is Robert, we created ISIS. We definitely created ISIS. There's no question about it, along with many other Sunni terror groups. We absolutely did. And nobody wants to talk about that, do they? Except for we do, but nobody wants to talk about that. The government doesn't want to admit to it. And those are some of the things I would like to see discussed more Yes, I love seeing these Doge cuts. He's going to reduce the force at USPS. Elon Musk, he's still involved. He's an advisory role, but there are still things they're doing. He went to the NSA yesterday, I believe it was. They're going to cut the IRS staff by what, with 20%? I think USPS by 10 or 20%, something along those lines. He's still involved. They're still making cuts, but there's things that I want to see them do that they're not doing, and of course, it's not my job to tell them where to go or what to do. But I would absolutely love to see them tell the American people how much money we've spent on terrorism. All of these groups that go around and even kill Americans, how much money have we spent paying these people, training these people who just turn around and kill us? It's insane. They're probably the biggest threat we face right now is Sunni terrorism, jihadis, but nobody wants to talk about that, do they? Why? Because we funded them. Allison says, is the Mexican cartel a greater threat right now than China or Russia, since the cartel has Javelin missiles on their border and American officials on there? Yeah, I don't consider, quite honestly, Russia to be a threat to us at all under Donald Trump. Under Biden, yes. Under Donald Trump, no. China, I think we're eventually going to make friends with China. It's going to be a process, but where we will do it. And Russia is going to help us do that. Russia will help us create this peace deal. But then what about Iran? Where do we stand with Iran? Iran, China, Russia, North Korea, they're all aligned. Now, Donald Trump has a pretty good relationship with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. So I don't think they're a threat to us. But I do wonder about Iran. And, you guys know my love of Colonel Douglas McGregor, who I believe is a friend of Colonel Joe Adams. And I have a little video clip of him talking about Iran and how Donald Trump is doing the right thing with Zelensky. And he needs to do the same thing with Netanyahu, because Netanyahu is dead set on a war with Iran. And Trump right now is very aligned with Israel and very aligned with Netanyahu. And it's, I support the people of Israel. I'm not a fan of Netanyahu, and I'm not a fan of anyone trying to drag us into a war. So I'm going to play this little very quick clip for you here.
And Zelensky, frankly, the way he was treated, I think President Trump was far too gentle. I'm surprised that two giant Secret Service agents did not come in, pick him up, and remove him from the office. But the way he handled Zelensky is the way he's got to handle Netanyahu. Because if he doesn't, Netanyahu will drag him into the abyss. Because he wants this war in the Middle East come hell or high water. And it's not in their interest.
What war?
The war with Iran, the war with everybody. I mean, you've seen these settings where Netanyahu sits at a table and he's got everybody around him in his cabinet. And he says, this is our opportunity to settle with everyone. We're fighting on 5 fronts. No, we're fighting on 7 fronts. And he starts ticking off, everyone from the Houthis to the militias in Iraq and Syria and now Iran and so forth. If you look at the map today, he's trying to occupy Syria all the way up to the edge of Damascus. And Erdogan, who is a very clever but slippery character, has already said, forget it. We're not going to tolerate that in southern Syria. So he's pushing the envelope to the very edge. In Damascus, there are 3 great Islamic cities in the region. One is Cairo, the other is Jerusalem, and then Damascus. They're not going to surrender Damascus to the Israelis. So whatever happens, the Turks will eventually become involved. They'll march in.
So, that creates a kind of structural problem because Turkey is a member of NATO.
I don't think so, because I don't think NATO matters.
Maybe you're right.
I don't think it has for a long time.
Well, it matters in a material sense. We just use the name NATO to wage a war against Russia for 3 years that we lost.
Yeah.
So, but that would be the end of.
So I agree with Colonel Douglas McGregor. We have to be really careful. We don't need to be drawn into any wars. And I know that Donald Trump, of course, that he really has this special relationship with Netanyahu and with Israel. And I certainly understand why. However, it to me, no alliance is worth going to war. It's just not. And the last thing we want to do is go to war with Iran, that is the ally of China and the ally of Russia. It is just not what we want to do. We need to be making friends and not enemies. And, Iran, those people, they're not like us either. They don't like us. They never will. And they've done some very atrocious things to their people. But think about this. Who is in charge over in Iran? Those are people that the United States, that's just another puppet government, isn't it? That Obama controlled. That he brought the Muslim Brotherhood into Iran. They weren't there before. These people were Persians. Obama brought the Muslim Brotherhood into Iran. And before him, of course, we had Jimmy Carter involved. We, the United States, once again, placed a puppet government there. And when we do, it's easy to see when we place a puppet government into another country, because then people all start running around wearing black burqas. That's what, trust me, that's exactly what happens. They don't want to play our silly games, and then guess what? We just take over their country. And we can still do that with Donald Trump. I have a feeling he would like to do that with Canada and Greenland, but in a different sense, of course. Robert, Damascus will cease to exist overnight at some point. Yeah, things are really bad right now over there in Syria, really bad. Robert, funny how Bernie Sanders used to say tax cuts are for the millionaires and billionaires, except now that he is a millionaire, he only says billionaires. I bet he does. I bet he does, because we all know. I almost played a video today of Bernie Sanders. I'm like, I am not giving that guy the time of day. And his problem is that Bernie Sanders had a bigger role in running the Biden administration than most people know. Because, Bernie, if it weren't for Bernie Sanders, Biden would have never won. He would have never won, because it was Bernie Sanders and Sanders supporters who placed all of those folks into the USPS offices, into these different positions in the polls, to where they could allow this cheating to happen. That was all under Bernie Sanders' direction. And we know that's the case because they've told us. Sanders supporters have flat out told us that this is true. And what they said is that the Democrats cost them the election with Hillary Clinton, because Hillary Clinton did not beat Bernie Sanders in the primary. Bernie Sanders won the primary. They didn't care. The DNC put Hillary Clinton into place anyway. And we know this because Bernie Sanders supporters won a lawsuit, and the DNC had to admit that, yes, you're right, Bernie Sanders did win. We wanted Hillary to be the person. We're a private organization. Voting doesn't matter. And so they chose Hillary Clinton. Well, so what ended up happening is that Sanders supporters stepped up and they said, hey, Biden, you owe us. You owe us. And so therefore, we're going to get you elected, because we don't want Donald Trump to win. We're going to get you elected. And when we get you elected, by whatever means necessary, you're going to follow our policy. That is why all of a sudden, Joe Biden, who's just some old white guy, somehow old racist white guy, let's add that in, a pedophile on top of that, all of a sudden he's following the law of the 2% on the very far left. That's not by mistake. That's because that's what Bernie Sanders wanted. That's what his supporters wanted. That's how we ended up with, all of these ridiculous Marxist legislation. It's exactly that. And Robert, the Jews are not the Jews of the Bible. Robert, Sanders is a Marxist. Yes, Sanders is a Marxist. Good morning, Phyllis. And, there's a lot going on. ActBlue, I guess you guys all saw the video of ActBlue and these folks taking over Trump Tower. I think Trump's right. He's going to call them domestic terrorists. It's kind of funny to me that people on my Facebook page were saying, oh, how's Trump going to make them domestic terrorists? What about the J6ers? I'm like, yeah, you mean the J6ers that were sentenced to 30 and 40 years in prison for seditious conspiracy, who were kept in solitary confinement for over a year? You mean those people? Well, yeah, the Trump Tower is not the Capitol building. It's not a government building, but it is property that belongs to our United States president. And I think that Trump's absolutely right. We've got to start calling these violent protesters what they are, which is they are domestic terrorists. And we have to continue to call them domestic terrorists. I saw them all being loaded into some buses, being hauled off by the NYPD. And I think it's great. I don't know what's going to happen to these people, but I do hope they get charged with domestic terrorism. These are the same people paid by ActBlue, which of course Biden funded, Elizabeth Warren funds. They did a study recently. As a matter of fact, Comer and Andy Biggs, Representative Andy Biggs, they are investigating right now ActBlue, because they're trying to figure out how are these people being funded. And then they uncovered that under the Biden administration, the Treasury Department had a little red flag warning that said something weird is going on here, because you know how the banks started monitoring everyone's bank accounts? Well, the banks collectively notified the Treasury Department that, hey, there's some really weird stuff going on with ActBlue, with their account, deposits and transactions and things they're making. So, of course, under Biden, they never investigated it. Well, now that's going to change, because now we have Scott Bessent, of course, over the Treasury Department. We have Patel looking into it. And there is going to be an investigation into ActBlue to find out why they have received so much government money. Elizabeth Warren, I don't know if you guys know this, but Elizabeth Warren took some of the money that was intended for LA fire victims and she funded ActBlue. And what does that mean? That means that our government, even under Donald Trump's nose right now, they are still somehow funding ActBlue, and they're causing these people to go out to Elon Musk, to these Tesla dealerships, into Donald Trump's, of course, building. We've had all these conservative political commentators being swatted. I'm sure you guys heard about that over the past couple days. This is all funded. It's all funded partially by Soros, partially by our own government. I don't think any of that surprises you at all. Allison says, if you support a terrorist group or support a Hamas sympathizer, then your agency is a terrorist. Yeah, I mean, you could take that to say that, gee, our government under Democrat control was a terror organization. That's how the rest of the world views us, that we pay for all of this stuff to happen. And I'm so glad to see some of the things that are taking place. Now we have Donald Trump. He's going to enact that. I got to look up the exact name for it because I won't remember it on my own. It's called the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, to be signed into legislature today. And what that basically means is that it will allow Donald Trump not only to fast track deportation processes to countries that are considered our enemy. People say, well, that doesn't make sense because so many of these countries are not our enemy. Well, Donald Trump can decide he wants to call them our enemy if he wants to. And countries that supply drugs and weapons illegally into this country could be considered an enemy. But more importantly, what this is really going to be about, it's about these people who are pro-Hamas protesting in our country. And first when I saw that we had these protests at Columbia University, and there was a couple of people who were targeted for deportation and arrest by the Trump administration, at first I was thinking, in this country, we have the right to protest if you do so peacefully. They were not protesting peacefully. And then I thought, well, you don't necessarily have to be pro-Hamas to attend one of these rallies. You could be just pro-human life, pro-Palestinian. But then the more I looked into it, I realized that some of these students are part of these organizations who absolutely hate Americans. Their goal is to take over America, just like what they're doing over in Europe. They want our country to be ran by Muslims, and we just can't let that happen. I'm not against Muslims. I have friends that are Muslim, not against Muslims, but the fact is our country was founded on Christianity, and that's where it needs to remain. And we're not going to handle a takeover, because I think we all know what would happen. That while there might be some really great Muslims out there who would love to take over our government and have taken over the government, by the way, over in the UK, they would love to do that here too. Well, we can't allow that to happen, because what happens is, even though the friendliest of the friendly Muslims may be the people who run for office or take control in the beginning, we know that radicalism will seep in. And then eventually radicalism not just seeps in, but it takes control. And that's exactly what's happening in Europe. It's exactly what's happening in Europe. We can't let that happen here. Allison says, Soros-funded Student for Justice in Palestine is encouraging and supporting the protest. Thank you, Allison, for the name. Yes, Soros did fund Student for Justice in Palestine, and they go by SJP. And so by Donald Trump signing this act, the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, it's going to allow a lot of these students and these groups to be deported out of our country, because right now judges are holding this up. We can't win against some of what's going on right now. Democrats have a playbook. They do. They have a playbook. We know what that playbook is. And it is to hold up our processes in any way possible. Anything Donald Trump does, try to block it. Get your liberal judges to block it. And I would really like to know. I haven't talked to a legal person. I would really like to know exactly how much power a judge has, not just Supreme Court judge, but a district judge. We have 2 judges now saying that Donald Trump our government has to rehire, reemploy the thousands that it let go through the Doge audits. Thousands of people. I think I heard 60,000 government employees they're being forced to rehire. Now, how is it that a judge can tell a president what they have to do? Now, shouldn't the president be the top commander, the ruler of all? I know there's checks and balances systems, of course, but I don't see how a district judge can make this decision. And now there's 2. And Allison says Soros judges. Oh, yeah. That's one thing. Democrats, not good at a lot, but they were good at putting their people in power. And so now here we have Donald Trump. He's chosen the perfect cabinet. He's got everything all lined out, but we still have people trying to impede the process. We still, fighting tooth and nail with some of these people. Not only Democrats in Congress, who a lot of those should just be held in contempt, quite honestly. And then maybe they should all be censured. And then we have these judges who every step Donald Trump makes, they say, nope, not going to happen. No, we're not making these cuts. No, we're still going to fund. We're still going to fund USAID and all these other groups. It's really frustrating. I can't even imagine how Donald Trump must feel that he's actually here. He's trying to do the right thing for our country. And every single step of the way, there's a judge to pop his little head up and say, nope, not going to happen today, Donald Trump. Oh, it's so frustrating. But I will be glad to see what comes out of the ActBlue investigation, which Kash Patel, by the way, is going to head. And speaking of Kash Patel, that guy, he's probably, with good reason, the most paranoid person in our government right now. And I'm sure you guys have heard these little bits of stories about some of the things he's been doing. One was that he asked for a secure line into his office so that no other FBI agent could tap into his line or hear his conversations. He has asked for his own security detail to not be FBI. He does not want the FBI to be his security detail. He needs a security detail, by the way, because things are a little crazy for him right now. He's under constant threat. And again, we talked about Ukraine threatening people earlier. Ukraine has also threatened Kash Patel, allegedly. And then now he says that he wants to streamline past Attorney General Pam Bondi. He wants a direct line into the White House. Now, the typical chain of command is that the director of the FBI would contact the Attorney General, in this case, Pam Bondi. And then Pam Bondi would be the liaison between the president and the FBI director, because she, being Attorney General, is our top law enforcement official, not Kash Patel. But I don't think he trusts her, or maybe someone in her office. I think he trusts no one, and I think with good reason. Now, I don't have anything against Pam Bondi. I right now, she has given me no reason to trust her, despite that absolutely ridiculous Epstein stunt. I think hopefully she has learned her lesson, and we're going to talk about why we haven't seen the Epstein files yet. But Kash Patel, I mean, he has a good reason to be as paranoid as he is. I couldn't even imagine being in his place and not having anyone to trust. The people, the FBI has been taking over at the top, not the field officers, but the folks at the top, they hate him. They don't want Kash Patel in the FBI. That's the last thing they want. They want to continue on weaponizing, the judicial system against us, not for us. So the man, he's got to have his head on a swivel, I am sure. I am absolutely sure of it. And Allison, taxpayers paying their salary, I say fired. Yeah, they should be fired. Allison, the director of FBI, should have direct contact with the president. Yeah, I get that, but there is a chain of command, which is, he hasn't, as far as I know, gotten permission yet to have that direct line of talk with Donald Trump. But I'm wondering why he wants to subvert Attorney General Pam Bondi. There's a reason why he wants to go around her and why he doesn't want to go through the typical process. What that is, I don't know. The only thing I can think of that wouldn't be some, reason that would cause any doubt on Pam Bondi's part is that maybe he's uncovering things that are really on a need-to-know basis, that really the less ears that hear, the less eyes that see is the best option. And I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. because we know exactly what the government's been doing. Clearly, it's a big machine. You pay your taxes. Your taxes go into this fund, of course, and then that fund gets distributed to all these NGOs, which are newly created, which belong again to somebody's dog or their wife or their grandmother. And it's just a big money laundering scheme with your money. Our country's gone bankrupt, in fact, from these people stealing from us. It was just an open door policy under Joe Biden. And of course, we talked about, and I was confused the other day when I was talking about auto pens. I didn't really understand what an auto pen was. I thought Autopen was similar to DocuSign in that when you DocuSign, it's all done on a computer, but it's not that way. And now they have uncovered a second Autopen, and now they're saying what an Autopen is. And it's actually like a device that you put on a piece of paper and it signs a signature. It's like a mechanical device. It goes on paper. It signs a signature. It duplicates a signature. So therefore, it's not electronic written, it's not through a computer or like a DocuSign. It is literally a machine written signature to copy the real signature of someone. Now they've uncovered there's two of them, and still, we are still hearing that the only document ever signed by Joe Biden himself was when he withdrew from the 2024 election. That's it. The rest of them were all auto-signed with this auto pen. And you have to start asking, well, who held the auto pens? We had one, now we have two. Are there more? Who had free reign to just sign all of these documents? Not only creating law, changes in legislature, but authorizing payments to be made to all of these different groups. And I know I keep saying, and I'm so frustrated over it, that I want to see arrests. I want to see accountability. And I still don't think we're ever going to see these things. I hope I'm wrong. We've got some more time left. Of course, we're still in the early processes of President Trump's term, but we'll see. Good morning, Scott. Allison said, too many leakers. Oh, of course, because you just can't trust these people that Democrats put into play. Paul, there were a lot of people on Trump's first term that we thought we could trust, and we were proven wrong. You're right. You're right. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but I had the opportunity to meet someone who served as one of Donald Trump's advisors. He was here in the St. Louis area to meet with somebody that I was, assisting with a campaign. And so I got to have a time and talk to this guy. And at the show I was on, he came on as a guest, as a matter of fact. And so he told me privately that, you know what, Donald Trump ended up, during that term, he ended up listening to some people he shouldn't have listened to. There were people that managed to get into his inner circle that gained his trust that shouldn't have been there. And, I'm not going to name who those people are because at this point, it's kind of irrelevant. But the fact is that somehow these people did get in and they did gain his trust. Ronna McDaniel was one of them. She's gone now, so it doesn't really matter. There was a couple others that still in play, but we'll see how they turn out. And I think we have to be very careful. We can't just be trusting of everyone. And I know there's a lot of people that don't trust Pam Bondi. I'm hearing it constantly. People just don't trust her. And I think that's because of, well, for me anyway, I didn't even really know who she was prior to her becoming the attorney general. But there are people who think that she did things in Florida, that she was a buddy of course, DeSantis, who is not Trump's best friend, by the way. So I don't know. I'm trying to trust her, but we still haven't seen the Epstein files. We still haven't seen the JFK files. We still haven't had any disclosure over UFOs or UAPs. These are all things I would have expected to see right now that we were promised we would find out. What about all of the, what were they called? All of the orbs and all of the drones. Very suspicious circumstances there. And we were told we would find out, but we haven't found out. No one has told us anything. And it is hard to trust when you were given promises and those promises are not upheld. And for Pam Bondi and that charade she pulled with those Epstein files, I mean, when she realized that this can't be it, she should have just canceled that meeting. I mean, she would have saved so much face if she would just cancel that meeting. And Linda, I want things fixed. Wrongful pardons. Yes. Let's go back and let's look at all the documents that Joe Biden signed in those 4 years. Let's go through them with a fine-tooth comb and let's undo them all because he didn't sign them. If they were signed by an auto pen, then not only did Joe Biden not sign them, but we also know he really didn't even know what was going on. I don't know if you guys remember, at one point they were talking, the reporters were asking him about a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, and He had absolutely no idea what was going on. It was so clear. And that's why they didn't want him to take questions, because he had absolutely no idea what was going on. It's crazy. And I mean, then that's our government for you. It is absolutely insane, the things that are happening in our country. But things are turning around. They're turning around, slowly but surely. I'm looking forward to the investigation into ActBlue. Let's see. Paul says they are pacifying us until the next big catastrophe. I feel like we're being pacified. My concern, let's see, with Bondi is what she did or knows in Florida, especially regarding Epstein there. Also true. Who are their names being protected, in Florida or in this, just in this country in general? Allison says, looks like Greenland is closer to being part of the US. The pro independence party won the election, and the Greenlanders polled 70% want to be a part of America. Well, Allison, as Donald Trump said, Greenland will be ours one way or the other, one way or the other. So they can come peacefully or they can come forcefully. And so it will happen. And he's not given up his sights on Canada either. I'm not less convinced that we need Canada, quite honestly. Maybe that's because I'm sympathetic to some of my Canadian friends who probably just like having the sovereignty of their own country, of the sanctity of Canada. And so yesterday, Trump he made it, he was giving a speech and an interview or something like that. And he said, I'll let them keep their anthem. They can keep their "Oh Canada" anthem, but they're going to become our 51st state. And I'm like, man, they've got this new guy that took over. We talked about him last week. Is it John Carney? Is that his name? That took over for Trudeau. And how they say when you get rid of one socialist, you just get one that's even worse. And that's exactly what's happened to Canada. They got rid of Trudeau. The Liberal Party put this guy in place, didn't even have a legit election for this guy to become their prime minister. And he hates Donald Trump. He hates every single thing we stand for. And that's kind of scary when you consider that to be right on our border. Then we had Trudeau talking about he termed it colorful conversation he had with Donald Trump about Canada, being annexed into the United States. I don't know if I see that one as likely as Greenland. Greenland will become the United States. One way or the other, it will absolutely happen. Donald Trump is not going to give up. And, really, he can't give up. Because if we don't have those rare earth minerals, we will cease to exist. So as much as we hate it, and we hate to tell another country that either we're going to take you by diplomacy or we're going to take you by force, none of us want to see those things said or see it happen in that way. But at the same time, if we want to maintain our power for our future generations, we absolutely have to have those rare earth minerals. And it's much easier to get them diplomatically as possible through Greenland than to take them from somewhere else, because I've said that many times before, that the Democrat regime, if they wanted something, there was no diplomacy. They took it. Now, they had to put terror groups into power to take it, because I guarantee you that under Democrats, they controlled the natural resources in all of these different countries in which we place terrorists into power. That's the case. I don't have to tell you guys that. And so Donald Trump is trying to handle things diplomatically, but when that fails, you know what? We go to plan B. Because in the end, we have to worry about our own safety and our own national security. And we need those rare earth minerals for our own national security. Allison says they're too liberal for me. They can keep Canada. Most Canadians aren't, though. Just like the media does, they portray Canada to be so crazy and liberal. But most of Canada is not crazy and liberal. Most of them are just like we are. Most of them. I can't tell you how many now. It's a long story. Most of the Canadians I know are all hockey players, but every single one that I have met has always supported Donald Trump. As a matter of fact, I haven't talked to them in a little while, but I'm good friends with the coaches of the Chicago Blackhawks. And I don't know if I should be telling you this or not. I don't think any of them listen, so it probably doesn't matter. But whenever they would come into town, I would go and hang out with them, just friends, nothing more than that. And Canadians, some of them, and they absolutely love Trump. They were so happy when Trump won in 2016. They were thrilled to death. And I know people want to say, well, French Canadians do not like conservatives, but these, I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to give away who I'm talking about. But these people love Donald Trump. They love patriots. They feel like patriots themselves, and they hate what's happening to their country. So maybe could we see it as though we're liberating Canada, from woke mind virus? I don't know. It might be going too far for some. And Allison says they're liberal to me. Oh, you said I already read that. And let's see. If anything, don't give them voting rights. Well, we'll see how things play out there. We'll see, but we've got a lot going on in our own country, a lot of things to work on. We're going to find those Epstein files. We're going to find those JFK files eventually, but people have already let it go. Have you noticed that? Already, nobody's right on Pam Bondi like they were. Remember that? Remember Rep. Anna Paulina Luna? She was making posts to Pam Bondi. I want to see those files now, like right now, today. She made a deal with Pam Bondi that on the JFK files that, hey, we want to see them released to the public before any reports are written. Well, that's not happening anymore. All of that has gone to the wayside. And I feel those were promises that were made to the American people. And I think that the Trump administration, they need to keep those promises. When you make promises to the people and you get voted into office based on those promises, you have to keep those promises. And I'm not being hard on Trump. I know he's got bigger things to worry about right now. But at the same time, I worked really hard for Donald Trump. My son and I, being in Georgia for 42 days, getting out the vote for Donald Trump. And I feel like we're owed some answers. And I realize I have to have patience, and I will have patience. It's not going to be easy, but things are happening. Now we've got, now here's something positive to kind of end Friday with. We don't have too much longer on the show. HHS Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr., guess what? He's given an ultimatum. We know what he's doing with some of the fast food restaurants, trying to make sure that we have tallow in place of seed oils for frying, which is an absolutely fantastic idea, absolutely necessary. Well, now he is giving an ultimatum to a lot of other companies. As some examples, Kellogg's, Smucker's, General Mills. He's telling them they have to end their use of artificial food dyes. Why? Because it's making Americans sick. It is. It's making Americans sick. And I am 100% behind this. There are so many things. Like I said, we're just at the beginning of Trump's presidency. I can't wait until these people really get to work for Americans. Think of all the things Robert Kennedy Jr. is going to tell us. When are they going to tackle chemtrails? That's what I'd like to know. Weather modification. What kind of experiments have they played on the American people that we don't even know about? What about, all the situation with COVID and turbo cancers? I really want to know about the turbo cancers because that's big on my mind, here recently for a lot of different reasons. And so I want to know, what exactly did they do to us? Is anyone going to tell us? Or is the Trump administration going to feel that if they really told us the truth about everything, that we would, mutiny? I mean, not against the Trump administration. What would we do? Would we demand that these people be lynched, at Guantanamo? Probably so. Well, I've got a little video here of Robert Kennedy Jr. talking exactly about what he wants to do.
Hi, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I'm the Secretary for the Department of Health and Human Services. In the final months of the election, President Trump repeatedly called for removing toxins from our food supply. He added his voice to the millions of Maha moms who were touting the Make America Healthy Again agenda. The first step is radical transparency because right now, not even the U.S. government knows what's in our food. In 1958, the government created a designation called Generally Recognized as Safe, or GRAS, so that we can make common ingredients like salt and baking soda exempt from testing. But today, it isn't just salt and baking soda. Food companies and cooperative regulators have enlarged the GRAS exemption so that these companies can decide for themselves whether a substance is generally recognized as safe. No FDA approval is needed. European nations, on the other hand, require that a chemical be proven safe before it becomes a food ingredient. In our country, the GRAS standard means that every chemical is presumed safe until proven dangerous, and that proof might not happen until millions of Americans are sick with chronic disease. This mass experiment on the American population with GRAS has, in short, been a catastrophe. We now have around 10,000 chemicals in our food, while Europe has only 400. For example, titanium dioxide, potentially linked to DNA damage and cancer, is banned in the EU, but it's in our children's food. Potassium bromate, a suspected carcinogen banned in Europe and Japan. And you guessed it, it's in our children's bread. Food dyes such as red dye 40 and yellow 5 and 6 come with warning labels in Europe. They're linked to behavioral issues in children, but in the U.S., they're generally recognized as safe. I can't really blame the food companies. They're just doing what we've allowed them to get away with in a system that's taken on a life of its own. We all agree now that it's time to change the system, and that's exactly what we're going to do. I am today directing the FDA commissioner to start the process of changing the rules to eliminate the self-affirming GRAS pathway for new ingredients. I'm also directing the FDA and NIH to ramp up post-market assessments of GRAS chemicals currently in our food so that we can rapidly identify the compounds that are making Americans so sick, and so that American consumers and regulators can make informed decisions. This issue isn't going away. Moms aren't going to return to wanting chemicals in our food that are banned in other developed countries. Even industry knows that we have to change. So I promise you, I'm going to work with all parties, the companies, the moms, the scientists, the consumer advocates, to make American food the healthiest in the world the way that it was when I was a child.
That's what exactly. I almost forgot to turn my microphone on. We have to start thinking about our health. And I am so glad, I couldn't be more happy that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is in charge of the HHS. I am thrilled to death because there's been a time, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, just like all of you, where you think nothing we do is healthy. You go to the grocery store and everything you see is poison. You buy something off the shelf, whether it's makeup or soap or something else, and it's just poison. Everything around us is poisonous for us. It's dangerous to us. They're putting hormones and antibiotics and things in our food. GMO food, yes, they feed the masses, but they don't have the nutrition included. And people are living on fast food and other very unhealthy things. And health, some of I'm facing my own bit of a health crisis right now. I think I've told a little bit of the story before, and it continues to develop. And I'm trying to figure out what exactly is happening, not only to everybody else's health, but my own. When I was in Georgia, I was having a hard time breathing, which isn't that unusual for me. I had some lung issues back a few years ago, which has caused me asthma-like symptoms. I don't have asthma, but asthma-like symptoms. And I was really having a hard time breathing. And some of you know the story and some of you don't. I came home for a week because I'm like, man, I really need to get this checked out. And I didn't want to go to a hospital or anything, when I was in Georgia. And I did talk to a pulmonologist there who was going to see me, but I'm like, I don't want to do that. So I came home. I had a CT scan done, and I had 2 nodules in my left lung. And I can't remember how big they were, like 6 millimeters and 11 millimeters, something like that. And then something in something else was going on too. And so with my lungs, and then they're like, okay, well, we can't, when the radiologist did the report, he's like, well, we can't exclude that it's a neoplasm. So you're going to have to come back and get another CT in 3 months. Well, of course, it took my doctor forever to order one. I just had one done last Monday. And then my report came back and it said, okay, well, not only did, these 2 nodules you had in your left lung double in size, but now you have like a nearly 8 millimeter one in the other lung. And then this other thing, which I think this part's harmless, it's like 20 millimeters, big. And they're like, we have to, it could be metastatic. I know I'm not saying that right. Disease, a malignancy, or whatever that word is, I'm trying to say. I'll never get it right. And so now they're like, you have to go and get a PET scan. And I kept thinking through my head, I don't think it's cancerous. I think it's probably, who knows, viral infection. I'm not really sure. I'm not really all that concerned with it. But at the same time, I want to know. And I'm thinking, well, what in the world is going on? I don't smoke. I've never smoked a day in my life. And now all of a sudden they think I could have lung cancer, my lymph nodes are swollen in my chest. And the only thing I can think of is, and it takes me back. I'm not saying this to give all my medical history to people. My point is that I think that our government wants us to be sick. And I think if it turns out that whatever I have going in my lungs actually is some type of malignancy, however it may turn, I think that it's because of COVID. I really do. I know that sounds crazy to some of you, but I always said, even back when COVID was going around, that it is a bioweapon. It's a bioweapon. I have two friends right now who have never smoked, never, really stay in pretty good health, didn't get vaccinated. And now they have these turbo cancers. And I'm like, how can that possibly happen? People want to talk about people getting vaccinated and they get the turbo cancers. Well, what if COVID really is that bioweapon and people are getting, some of these blood clots and some of these different types of turbo cancers because of the COVID itself? Maybe it was bioengineered in a lab because we know it was supposed to be a bioweapon. We've been told that it was a bioweapon. So maybe it was meant to cause all of these different illnesses in people. So I'm very curious about how all of that works out. And I think it's awfully strange that a lot of people who are getting these different types of turbo cancers have turned to therapies like ivermectin. And guess what? The ivermectin works on a lot of these cancers and a lot of these illnesses because it's parasitic. To me, it all makes sense. I don't know about you guys, but to me, it all makes sense that they could have engineered COVID to contain parasites. And then, of course, it spreads like a virus. You're able to pick up these parasites. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you have these turbo cancers. And then what happens is the pharmaceutical industry, what do they want to do? They want to give you chemotherapy, right? They want to give you more drugs to harm you. They just want us to be sick. It's all a big money grab based on our health. That's really all it is. That's all it is. And good morning, Ken Lee. And let's see, Paul Bayer, formerly Monsanto, will throw as much money as they can to stop him from achieving anything in the industry. You've got such a great point, Paul. These companies, do you really think that the fast food's different? It's pretty easy to switch from seed oils to tallow. That's a pretty simple switch. But to take your food dye, can you imagine Smucker's taking all the food dye out of their jellies and jams? Or a situation where we have General Mills, who has all of these cereals, who use red, blue, green food dyes, yellow food dyes to make their cereals appetizing for children, because that's who they target, isn't it? The kids. What about these big soda companies that make Fanta soda bright orange? Can you imagine what all of these foods look like without the colors? Certainly not as appetizing, right? And not as fun for kids. But they don't care about your health. That's just it. They do not care about your health. They don't care. All they care about is making you sicker so they can make more money. That's really all it's about. And Allison says, I make jelly without dyes. Excuse me. I have made my own jelly before. And I've made my own jelly just by cooking fruit. I mean, it's pretty easy. You don't need dyes to do that. Ken, I will be reaching out to be on the show. Yeah, Ken Lee, for anyone who knows, on the comment line this morning, I've been trying to get Ken to join us on the show. He is a former Marine One pilot for Kennedy and Bush, and I absolutely cannot wait to talk to him. I think you guys will all enjoy that conversation. Paul says it's the GMOs that they don't want touched. Oh, of course, they don't, they want us to be poisoned. They want us to be sick. That's the big cycle, isn't it? So I can't wait to see how the Trump administration handles the pharmaceutical companies. Excuse me. I'm talking about problems with my lungs, and now I can't breathe. I'll probably be coughing the rest of the show. But either way, it's about time for me to be heading out either way. I've got to take my Jeep in to get it fixed. I told you guys my story the other day about getting scammed with a repair person here locally. So I'm taking my Jeep to the dealership. So that's going to happen today, here in just a couple minutes, actually. Annette, natural food dyes are great. Expensive, but great. Yeah, Burger King is a group that advertise natural food dyes. If you guys remember around Halloween, they had this bun that was deep purple, and then they had a bun that was black. And they said they obtained those colors through natural food dyes, beet dye, and I can't remember what else. But, that's the way to go. And I know I'm not going to spend much time today talking about gardening, but I think you all know that you absolutely must become self-sustaining. You absolutely must. Even if you just have a couple of pots out on your porch or in your house, trust me, you can grow vegetables inside your house. You can. Even if you're outgrowing a percentage of your vegetables, even just enough for you and your family, or, that's good. It's less you're buying at the grocery store, less poison you're putting into your body. It really is. And then, I'm right on it this year. I still planting seeds, still got a long way to go. I'm actually only working half a day tomorrow so I can get some more of my seeds started. I've been planting a lot of flowers, lots of vegetables, so a lot of things going on. And I'm not great at it. Last year my garden was a huge fail, as I've said many times, but you just have to keep trying. You just have to keep doing. And even if you harvest some things, that's things you're eating that you grew and you didn't use pesticides on. And we have no idea what's coming from these grocery stores. And then think about this, a lot of the produce we get at our grocery stores, it's not even from the United States. And we've made an awful lot of enemies with people. It's like, what are they doing to our food? I don't trust anything. I don't trust anything. Yeah, I've been living on yogurt, quite honestly, for the past couple weeks because it's like I don't know what's going on with all of the poison that's taking place in our country. So we got to keep an eye on it. Alice says, get your filters clean. Allison, I still have not found my furnace filters. I don't even know where the furnace is, quite honestly. I'm going to have to look for that. I've got 2 furnaces here. I've never seen either one of them. I don't have a faintest clue where they're at. Allison says, planting beets and carrots next week. Yeah, I just bought I bought the raised bed last year. I just didn't put it together. So I bought 3 of these little raised beds. Gardening does not have to be expensive either. It does not have to be expensive. I bought these 3 raised beds. They're small. I don't want them to be big because I don't want to have to fill them with too much stuff. But they were, I think, $29 each. And I'm going to use one to put carrots. I'm going to use one for strawberries. And I'm going to use one for herbs. And then I might buy one more to put, what was it? There was something I was going to put in there and I don't remember what it was. I was going to buy one more for something else. Asparagus, because I want to plant asparagus, but I want to keep it isolated away from the rest of the garden. So that's one thing. And my herbs, I want to keep separately as well. So you know what? You don't have to be good at it. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't. But we all need to start taking care of ourselves and care of your health. You know what? Time is precious. It is the one thing we just don't have much of. And, if you get out now and you start now, then guess what? Maybe you'll live a little bit longer because you're eating healthier. You're doing better things for your body. We all have to take care of ourselves in some way. So we've got to do it. Getting more sun. I'm a big believer, and when it comes summertime, I walk around the backyard all the time in my bare feet. I garden in my bare feet. I absolutely believe in being grounded to the earth with your bare feet. So that's something we all have to think about. And we're going to talk about that more on future shows. In the meantime, I've got to run. It is 9:00. I have an appointment with the Jeep dealership in town. So I got to make a run for it. And Lori says, sounds like he has Parkinson's. Not the point of the video. Let's see here. I'm not sure what that situation is. I know there is something going on. Allison says, planting beets and carrots next week. Yep, I read that. Jay says, find them and get your filters changed. Allison says, hire a company to come and find and clean the filters. Yeah, I don't know where. I know there's furnaces in this house, but I don't know where they're at, but I will work on that. All right, guys, I hope you have a really fantastic weekend. Please be careful today with these storms coming through. And just to reiterate for people who haven't been keeping an eye on the weather, they're calling it, if there's a meteorologist, I don't know if he's a meteorologist, but he's like a storm chaser called Reed Timmer, I think is his name. And I was watching him and he talked about this bear claw. They call it the bear claw that's coming through. And it's primarily going to affect Madison County in Illinois. Looks like it's going to get hit, maybe the worst of all the counties. But it looked like these little stripy storms coming through. But again, heavy winds, maybe EF1 to EF2 tornadoes or EF0 tornadoes, but not EF4, not EF5. I don't think we're, having to prepare for Armageddon here. It's going to be a very quick moving storm. It's going to move through. It's going to be gone. I think we just have to hope that there's no injuries due to falling trees or things like that. And Dottie says, you should have 2 tune-ups a year on your furnaces. Yeah, I'm going to have to work on that, Dottie. All right, guys, I do hope you have, I'm going to start coughing. I do hope you guys have a really good weekend. I will look forward to seeing you all on Monday. And of course, we'll be keeping up to date this weekend on the social media platforms with anything new going on. Have a good weekend, everyone. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap.